watching StarBiz News. On our post-budget show today is Professor Mahendhiran Nair, Deputy President Strategy at Monash University, Malaysia. Now, Prof, you've seen the budget. The budget 2015 addresses the need for development as well as fiscal prudence. Was this a tough call for the PM?
I think it's an excellent budget given the times at the present moment. I reckon that the budget is a prudent budget. It meets the needs of the poor, particularly the concerns of the poor with the rising costs. But also the budget sets the pace for developing our Malaysian corporate sector to move up the innovation value chain. So I think it's a fairly balanced budget given the current environment we are in.
Is this achievable, most importantly?
I think it is achievable, given the fact that the prudence that we need to adhere, particularly with respect to the fiscal deficit position we are. And I think what is really interesting is that there's a lot of push within the budget to support SME, a lot of support for micro firms. These are the firms that are having difficulty in terms of competing and moving up in terms of the innovation and knowledge value chain. So I think it's a big relief for them. Almost close to more than 90% of our industry is actually SMEs. So it's a welcoming budget for the SMEs.
We're talking about the economy moving up. What about the leakages that have been hounding us in the past? Now, would these leakages undermine fiscal prudence?
Well, one of the things, if you see over the last 2 to 3 years, while there's a lot of discussion on leakages, I think the authorities and the agencies have actually been ramping up in terms of closing some of the leakages. If you look at the media, there's a lot more legal cases that are coming pertaining to issues related to corporate governance. I think a lot more can be done, but I think we're on the right path in terms of closing some of the leakages, particularly at the highest level.
What can be done, Prof?
I think having a very transparent process in place, that is number one, particularly with respect to procurement for some of the big contracts, making sure that it's an even playing field. And more importantly, I think the continuous, the Auditors General's report that comes out annually, I think following up on that and making sure and holding people accountable to some of the issues that have been discussed or, released in the Attorney General. I think that's the first step.
Well, let's look at this from a macro perspective view. Now, the world economic outlook is not too rosy. Do you think we can maintain the momentum of foreign direct investments that came in last year? I think the numbers were around 38.7 billion ringgit, or even supersede that?
I think if you see the environment over the last 2 to 3 years has been very, very challenging, not only for Malaysia, but for the regional economies. In spite of the challenges, Malaysia was able to draw in reasonably, good FDIs. But that's on the back of actually very strong fundamentals. I think there's a big push by the government over the last, under the 10th Malaysia Plan. If we want to bring in the right FDIs, the key drivers are actually being able to have the skilled workforce, the technical capabilities, and also having a good supplier network to support big industries.
Then what would set us apart from the rest of the region to attract these foreign direct investments?
I think one of the things that we, in particularly if you look at the ASEAN region, besides Singapore, one of the advantages that Malaysia has is that it has got a very strong open economy compared to many of the other economies, but it's got a very versatile workforce. In terms of being able to communicate in English and also a fairly vibrant entrepreneurial environment. So again, supporting that, Malaysia is a fairly open economy, and I think that's going to continue to happen. But I think without building the research, development, and the innovation, and enhancing the innovative capabilities of our industry, it's going to be really challenging.
Now let's talk about the Malaysian National Development Strategy. It's now a work in progress at the moment. Would this form the basis of the 11th Malaysia Plan?
Definitely. I think the 11th Malaysia Plan essentially is the first of its plan in terms of setting the pace for the next stage of our development. As I mentioned, this is the next 5-year stretch before we become a developed economy. And if you see that the next 5-year plan will focus on 5 key things. One is really building our infrastructure. We've got a lot of work in terms of transportation. There's a lot of, if you look around Malaysia, there's a lot of massive transportation development that is happening. There's a lot of technological development that is happening, particularly with the broadband and other industrial park and corridor development. On top of this infrastructure development, building the human capability. So one of the key things is that building a lot of science, in terms of the corridor development, in terms of the technological infrastructure, ensuring that the human capital meets the technological needs and the innovation needs of the country.
Are we on the right track, Prof?
I think the foundations are there. the next 5 years will be really critical for Malaysia to move up in terms of becoming a developed economy. I think we've got all the blueprints in terms of the building blocks. How we put it together to make it work is going to be really critical. And I think the 11th Malaysia plan is going to be the plan that will orchestrate that.
Right, thanks, Prof. And that's Professor Mahendhiran Nair from Monash University. Thank you for following the Budget 2015 series on StarBiz, and I'm Zunaira Saieed.